Jerry's World, AT&T Stadium seems to be a fitting place to house the explosiveness that we expect to see on Saturday with Baylor taking on Texas Tech. With the Red Raiders down last year, they still made it a 48-46 game, or a 48-46 loss to Baylor last season. Should provide more fireworks this year. We bring in Sean Cordy of Today's U to talk up the Bears and the Red Raiders. So where do we start? We got to start offense somewhere. Sean, let's start with the Baylor offense. And Seth Russell, there were questions about him taking over for Bryce Petty leading into the season. What have you seen thus far, even though the competition not quite what it will be this Saturday?
Yeah, I've seen Russell really improve game by game. He kind of struggled the first, actually never really struggled against SMU, but as a whole team as a whole. But what most people were really worried about Russell was just the name recognition that Bryce Petty was. But Russell has provided that air power that we've become known with Baylor in the past few years. And my concern with him coming into the season was that he would look at the hot read and then kind of collapse in the pocket. But he's done really well looking at all of his reads, especially Corey Coleman. That's his typical hot read, and he's done very well with that, of course. But he's been spraying the ball around really well to Jay Lee, KD Cannon, Lynx Hawthorne, here and there as well. But mostly he's done really well. He's only been sacked one time. So that kind of shows his mobility as well as his just natural passing ability.
Yeah, considering Big 12 defenses and the style of play in the Big 12, maybe these two wide receivers can keep up these kind of numbers. Corey Coleman, as you well know, 8 touchdowns to lead FBS play, averaging 153 yards a game, 27 yards per catch. KD Cannon's at 24.5 yards per catch. Those are just like ridiculous figures. But again, they may be able to somewhat maintain those against Texas Tech and going forward. So what does Baylor have on the ground that can kind of complement what they do through the air?
Well, honestly, the passing game is complementing the ground game. People really overlook that. Baylor's leading the nation with just under 400 yards on rushing per game. You have Shock Linwood as the starter, but then you arguably have 3 other starters behind him, and Johnny Jefferson, Terrence Williams, and Devin Chafin. Chafin was the only running back not to have over 120 yards rushing against Lamar. Yes, it's an FCS program, but that's a ridiculous number. No one's done that other than Baylor. And Russell can run as well. So they have 5 people that can run it at any time. When you have an offensive line like Baylor does, they're kind of like the college equivalent of the Dallas Cowboys right now. They can run it as much as they want, whoever's behind there.
All right, let's flip the script to Texas Tech. Really, the only concern offensively is the injury status of Patrick Mahomes. None of us are going to definitely know at this point how he's progressing throughout the week. Little's known on collegiate athletes and their prognosis for Saturday, but he comes into this game having really performed against TCU. He really had his coming out party, even though he had some really nice games leading into the Baylor game last year. It was obviously against a Baylor team that was fighting for the college football playoff that people started to recognize Patrick Mahomes' talent. 30 for 56 for 598 and 6 touchdowns against the Baylor defense last year. I know you were really high on Patrick Mahomes coming into 2015.
Yeah, and he's really shown that why I was so high on him coming into this season. He's, I think, 5th in the nation in QBR right now. And as much as that's just a stat that we say, it's a huge encompassing stat that just shows how efficient he's been both on the ground and through the air. He has a huge deep ball, and he's been spreading the ball around really well. He fits Kingsbury's system very well. And I'd have to say, I think he's going to play and this might just be a mind game that Kingsbury's playing with Baylor at this point, how it took them up until game day to say who's starting. I think we're all just going to assume at this point it's Mahomes. I don't think he's that injured. Didn't look like he was still playing fairly well into that last drive. It almost saved that game for them. So I think that he's going to be starting, and I don't think he's going to have too much of a problem. He has one of the best lines in front of him like Russell does as well.
So you got DeAndre Washington at running back for Texas Tech. We talked about Baylor's rushing attack. You described what they have in regards to balancing the passing attack. Washington hit up TCU for $188 and 4 touchdowns last week. He had 1,000 yards last season. Could become the first Red Raiders running back since Ricky Williams. Not that one, but if you remember the other Ricky Williams that played for Texas Tech back in 1998. So I'm guessing that the differences in these two teams, assuming Mahomes is fine, is that Baylor has the 2 elite NFL wide receivers, and taking nothing away from Texas Tech at the wideout spot, but that seems to be maybe an edge that Baylor has, that they're just almost unstoppable offensively. And do you think the Baylor defense is a little bit better than Texas Tech on D?
Yeah, I would have to say, as much as Baylor's had a lot of frack for their defensive play against lesser opponents, giving up 31 points to Lamar was definitely a hit towards their resume. But Baylor leads the nation in sacks, which shouldn't come as much of a surprise with Sean Oakman and Andrew Billings. But they have a little guy named Jamal Palmer that not many people know about, considering he was out all last season. He and Sean Oakman have 11.5 tackles for loss combined. Keep in mind, Oakman has only played 2 games, so that's an incredible stat for them. And it's going to be a great test playing against Tech's offensive line, which gives up one of the least sack rates among the nation. So it's going to be a good battle, I think, offensively and defensively.
Little side note here. The series is tied 36-36-1. So
yeah,
how many points are going to get scored in this game?
It's probably been before I was born that these two have played where the total was under 90 points together. Gosh, this is going to be – it's probably going to be a high-scoring game, higher than last year. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 50-50 each. But I'm going to go Baylor. I'm not going to go scores here, but I'm going to go with Baylor. I think they have the edge, where I don't think Tech's defense can stop Baylor's offense at all, especially Coleman, who has had only 17 receptions on the year, but 8 have been touchdowns. He's almost had a touchdown every other play he's done. So I really think you have to go with Baylor just because of their go-tos that can beat you in so many different ways.
And unless Vegas knows something we don't, they've pegged Baylor as a 17-point favorite in this game. That seems a little heavy, but Mahomes may be banged up. And, of course, Baylor is an elite team in college football right now, and Texas Tech still proving themselves. But based on the sample size of Arkansas and what they did against TCU last week, Texas Tech is a much, much improved football team.
All right, and I'm going to add quick, if this was in Lubbock, I would be taking Texas Tech. They would have a huge home field advantage, but because this is a neutral location, it's going to be closer. But I was at the game last year. It's a pretty good 50-50 crowd between Tech and Baylor. I still think it's going to be Baylor's favor, but it's still a great home field advantage for both, if you want to say that, being a neutral location, of course. So,
okay, the over-under is 91. And that's in the first half. No, the over-under is 91 for the game. Baylor, Texas Tech should be a great one and means a lot toward the Big 12 championship. Sean Cordy joining us from Today's U. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
See you.